Well, thanks, Jim, and good morning, everyone. It's a little bit of a return to early May here. Some fairly cool temperatures across the state this morning, but there's I think, some encouraging news, especially for those needing rainfall and some water to talk about, and I'll get to that here just a moment. Looking though at the last week, a couple things to note. First, on the left-hand side here, we had, as we probably remember from our last briefing, we were expecting a big ridge over the region. We got that, and we had really, really warm temperatures. And these are departures from normal, and you can see for virtually all of the region, and certainly for Michigan, temperatures in some cases as much as 13 or 14 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for the week. And that's the warmest, the largest departure we've had here in a long, long time. Along with the warm temperatures, we also had, huge or large increases in degree days. I'll show you that chart here in just a second. But just as importantly, especially considering that water and the lack of water is really the major story in many parts of the state, our rates of potential evapotranspiration just shot up. And given that we now have leaf area out there and plant material, the water demands really jumped last week. So I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. In terms of precipitation, on the right-hand side here, these are weekly totals, but very important to note, yesterday's weather system, this only goes through 8 o'clock, these data here, yesterday morning. So some of the rain that fell in the southeastern part of the state is not reflected yet here. It wasn't as much as we would have liked to see in most areas, but it was still something more significant than has fallen over the last several weeks. But you can see, especially here in central lower Michigan, a number of areas, and that's probably the winner here in the precipitation derby for the week, where areas of central lower Michigan where 1 to 2, some cases more than 2.5 inches of rain fell for the week. There were 3 separate precipitation events, one on Sunday, one on Monday, and then one again yesterday. Some folks, we missed the one here in Hazlet on Sunday, but I picked up 0.2 of an inch on Monday, and I picked up another 32 hundredths yesterday. And probably similar to many of you, that 52 hundredths for the 2 to 3 day total, that's the most precip I had here at Hazlet since the 11th of April. It's been a long time. So obviously the water is definitely needed. And the good news is that there's more on the way here. That's, I think, the most encouraging news. So if you were missed yesterday or had less yesterday, there's more to come. And again, that plays into some of what Scott talked about, looking ahead for planting conditions. One thing on there's always a pro and a con with many of these weather impacts. And of course, while we have progress is way ahead of where it typically is this time of the year. So there's always a plus. Now we just have to get the moisture for germination, et cetera, and herbicide activation. Soil moisture, given even what we had here recently, not surprisingly, we're still well below normal for much of the state, but especially really the southern half to 2/3 of lower Michigan. That's where the area of greatest focus or concern is. Many areas here we're dealing with 20 to maybe 30% of plant available moisture for this is the top 3 feet of the profile. So we should be significantly higher than that at this time of the year. But these precipitation deficits go back a long way, in some cases back to the late winter. The U.S. Drought Monitor did upgrade conditions, or I should say they deteriorated, depending on how you look at it here. But we've had, for the first time here in the state in this current event, some D2 severe drought indicated. And you can see that down here in the southwestern part of the state. That was as of late last week. It was upgraded to D2. That's the first time we've seen a D2 in the state of Michigan since August of 2018. That was only for a week. Before that, and most of you will appreciate that, really the only lengthy period we had D2 or higher drought categories was back in the late summer of 2012, which of course was the last significant major drought here in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. So right now, just under 80% of the state classified as abnormally dry, either D0, D1, or D2, but it has unfortunately deteriorated over the last couple of weeks, given the continuing drier than normal pattern. I mentioned degree day totals jumping. These are base 50, 8650 cutoff, corn degree day totals beginning on the 1st of May. Remember, May started very, very unusually cool and chilly, and then got warmer as we moved on, especially into last week. So with last week's very, very warm conditions, there was a jump in degree day totals, and we went from behind normal. And of course, it's not difficult to do that given we've only got, we still don't even have a month of degree day totals to accumulate yet, but we went for most of the state from behind to now ahead of normal. The only exception to that would be up in the far northern part of the state, portions of upper Michigan still at or near where we typically are this time of the year. And one, I put this in for Dr. Chris Stefanzo, may have had a transport event here looking at the last week. We talked about this last briefing, but at several times, this is actually reflects conditions early Tuesday morning ahead of a cold front that was moving through the upper Midwest, actually the northern Great Plains at this point in time. This is overnight, early Tuesday morning. But looking at these wind barbs here, these depict the direction the wind is coming from and the speed. You can see a very, very strong southerly and southwesterly low-level jet stream here out of the Gulf of Mexico. This is what led to all of the precip, mostly to areas to our west, but it included portions of upper Michigan with all the moisture. But at the same time, it was a steady southerly wind, and there may have been, certainly if insects would have been aloft. These reflect conditions, these winds, about 3,000 feet off the ground surface. So again, if they get up into that low-level jet, they can ride considerable distances with the wind speed. And again, you can see a very, very clear pattern out of the lower Mississippi Valley up into the upper Midwest. So something at least to keep an eye on, or that could have happened. Well, I mentioned the forecast. We've got some more water on the way, and two weather systems on this morning's weather map of note. The first is the next weather system, which is out here getting its act together over the central Great Plains. That system, in contrast to yesterday's system, which went to our north and dragged a cold front through the state here yesterday, this one's going to go south of us, just like we would see typically during the cold season. And if this were 2 months earlier than we are, we might be looking at a fairly significant late season snowstorm, but it's not. It will be virtually all rain, and I use the word virtually because the second feature here, this big H, this is another Canadian visitor for this time of the year, a cold, dry Canadian origin air mass just to the north of the U.S. here, and that is dominant. Well, it's dominating our weather right now. We've got some frost and or just sub-freezing temperatures in far northern parts of the state. That's going to be the case again for the next couple mornings, but especially on Saturday. I think that'll be the last morning we have to deal with cold temperatures. I'll show you a graphic just in a moment here. But more importantly, looking at this weather system here, as it moves to the east, this is by tomorrow morning. You can see moving through Indiana, we're going to see rain develop here. We could have a chance of a little bit of light rain late this afternoon, I think, in far western parts of the state. But most of this we're talking about developing this evening and then into the overnight hours and then continuing into tomorrow. And here is Saturday morning. You can see it's basically out. I'll go back to tomorrow, though. Rain should continue across most southern areas of the state tomorrow, at least for the AM, the morning period, and then gradually end from west to east across the eastern sections during the afternoon. But this is for those that need rain. This is almost an ideal situation. We're looking not at a thunderstorm with 45 hundredths of an inch in 5 minutes. It's going to be a nice steady rain that hopefully can soak in and not run off. And so the best news about this is, as time has gone on, and this is in contrast to a lot of the last several weeks, there is encouraging signs that there will be more water available for the system to work with. And the precipitation totals actually have increased as we've gotten closer to the event. Originally, we were thinking quarter, half an inch with this system. I think we're going to do better than that now. And much of the guidance is suggesting now at least a half over most. This primarily across the southern 2/3 or so of lower Michigan is where we're going to see most of the rain. We'll see far less because of that high pressure up north. There will be a fairly sharp probably cutoff as to how far north the precipitation makes. I would also say, again, I used the word virtually a couple minutes ago, because as some of this precipitation moves in from the west in portions of northern Wisconsin and maybe portions of upper Michigan, there actually might even be a few snowflakes mixed in, and I hate to mention it is cold enough. The air here with this high pressure, and at this time of the year, we can still see some of that happen. But for everybody else, it's going to be it's going to be miserable tomorrow. I hate to mention that, but I think most people would gladly take that and take the moisture over. It will be, again, a very, very miserable day. High temperatures tomorrow in many areas only in the 40s, maybe to low 50s.
Oh, geez.
Steady, continuous rain and a northeasterly wind. So again, not a day you're going to want to be outside doing a whole lot of work. But again, I think the important thing is that we get some water out of this. All of the precipitation comes to an end by overnight Friday into Saturday morning. And that sets the stage here with high pressure building in the region for really a nice holiday weekend coming up here. It will be cool, but especially on Saturday, but we will see moderation in temperatures by Sunday and Monday back up to normal levels. So while we're only talking about highs, I mentioned yesterday, for Friday, tomorrow only in the 40s and 50s, we'll be back up to the 60s by Saturday for highs, and then probably above 70 again on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday of next week. Low temperatures, and I'll show you that here. Here are the max temperature forecast for Friday, as you can see, way below where they should be at this time of the year. Only 40s north, 50 south, and then there will be a threat of more frost and freezing temperatures tonight, but only, I think, in small areas of upper Michigan. A better chance for frost and freezing temperatures comes overnight Friday into Saturday, and that's what you see here. These are forecast low temperatures for Saturday morning, but note, they're not like some of the events that we saw earlier in May. We could see some upper 20s in interior areas of western upper Michigan, but most areas are going to be in the upper 30s, low 40s. You can see some exceptions away from the lakes. That's just typically the case this time of the year. So not a widespread freeze event other than some interior areas of upper Michigan, but it's a reflection of sort of the end of that season. And most importantly here again, and this is again, I think very encouraging, this is the forecast precipitation for the next week. Now, most all of this is in the event coming here overnight tonight and tomorrow. But you can see for at least for the southern half of Michigan, which is the driest part of the state, unquestionably, we've got a ½ inch in almost all areas, and in some cases maybe pushing 1 inch. So after the rain chances here tonight and tomorrow, next chance, we could see some showers on Tuesday of next week. It does not look like a major system. A better chance for significant rain probably towards the end of the week, Friday and into Saturday. And that looks, at this point in time, looks fairly promising. But next week will probably be a little bit on the drier than normal side. And I talked about temperatures. Medium range forecast guidance is having, I will say, some issues with consistency. But if we look at the jet stream pattern here on the left-hand side here, both the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks are suggesting that the jet stream will be further north than is typically the case this time of the year. That's what all these red dashed lines indicate, that it's just, again, further poleward than is typically the case. Along with that, it also suggests, and this is one of the only consistent things that we are seeing, is that temperatures probably will return to above normal levels here in the next 1 to 1.5 weeks. And I think I have some confidence in that. With precip, it's a much different story. It's all over the charts. The 6 to 10 day outlook, as you can see here, calls for actually drier than normal conditions. The 8 to 14 day, in contrast, calls for above. And to me, I would take it with a little bit of grain of salt here. There's not a clear direction, and there's not enough to say one way or the other. But I think out of all of the medium range guidance, the important thing is it does point towards warmer than normal conditions. And that leads me into the new long lead outlooks from NOAA's Climate Prediction Center here, beginning with June, the month of June up here on the top. And both the new 30-day or 1 month for June and then the 3-month, which is the June through August period, are calling for at least normal, if not above normal, mean temperatures, favoring that. They also, similar to the previous issuances, they also call for the equal chances or maybe even a little bit better chance of above normal precip. And this is true for most, at least of the first half of the summer. It trends. It's also warmer than normal for the late summer as well. If you look out beyond this, but precipitation is less clear. In terms of forcing factors, the La Nina that we had for much of since last fall and over the winter, and actually had very little impact on our winter weather, which is not usually the case. It's gone. We're now neutral in the equatorial Pacific, so there's no forcing factor out there. Interestingly, La Nina, though, may return this fall, so that's something to look at way out in the distant future. But right now, we're primarily neutral, and really all we're looking at are trends in the numerical forecast guidance. But they do, in general, they point towards warmer than normal mean temperatures and maybe a little bit above normal precip. And again, given our circumstances now, that would certainly be helpful or advantageous as we really get into the meat of the growing season. So I'll stop there, and again, we'll look forward to the precipitation in most areas, even though it will come with some less than ideal outdoor conditions, cold and wet. But I think most people will take the water. But then we should see after Saturday, especially, we should see some moderation in temperatures once again, and then looking at fair and actually really favorable conditions for at least for the first half of next week, mostly fair, dry, and warmer, and with temperatures close to where they should be. And as you just saw, there's also a trend in the medium range and longer towards warmer than normal weather as well. So I'll wrap up there for the weather and introduce next week's speaker, and that's our friend and colleague, Dr. Young-Suk Dong from MSU's Department of Biosystems Engineering, and he has a topic that we're talking about because of some of the weather here maybe a little earlier than we typically do in the year, but Young-Suk is going to be talking about better irrigation techniques. So don't miss that. Again, that's 1 week from today. And so Jim, I'll turn back to you here.